Hello, everyone. Pleasure seeing you.
Hello, Jarek.
Hello,
Hello,
Mr. Jason.
Hello, how are you all?
Hello, Mr. Jason number two. Two
am, I,
Jasons.
am I number two or?
Yeah, we're
No,
not
you're
sure.
number one. You're number one. Sorry, Jason.
Oh boy.
Sorry, Jason number two.
Take me down a level.
Is anyone ready for the horror stories and experiences of the real estate investors and property manager? Here we go. That's the time, right? So, Jason, can you tell us more about yourself, if you do not mind?
Sure. So I recently started property management. Started property management business approximately just about now 2 years professionally. Before that, I was doing my degree and I was helping my dad out with management of his rental properties. I wasn't a professional then, but at that time I was learning the old school way of managing properties. Let's just say that. Anyways, long story short, really, I got into the property management business because I noticed that there was a lot of flaws and obstacles my father was going through, and it just seemed to me that he wasn't profiting and capitalizing that market the right way. Now, yes, he did well with thanks to capital gains, but in the rental world, he was just facing so many difficulties. And old school guys, they don't want to change. They don't want to change their habits and their ways. So I decided to venture into the property management world professionally and got my license and actually worked through a company with the team and learn the systematic way to managing a property professionally and not just, writing down on a notepad if you collect a rent or not, or, making calls here and there, text messaging, or, how old school guys did it. I'm not pointing fingers at anyone. I'm just saying that not utilizing the technology we have today and the systems we have today to start a good operation. So yeah, that's how I started this business. Now, in the last 2 weeks, I did actually recently switch companies. You'll see Valley Realty on the presentation. However, I just actually became a partner officially just 2 days ago with the new property management and strata management company. So I'm pretty excited about this new venture of mine.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You rock. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. So, Jason, being in property management, I've done a lot of restoration work in my history. So I've dealt with a lot of property managements of, sprinkler systems blowing out and 140 units being washed out in a day.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a nightmare. So can you tell us a little bit about what it's like day to day as being a property manager?
Well, I think there's two. Well, not I think. I know there's two components of my business. One, it's our back end where we're running around, doing the paperwork, filing paperwork and updating things and doing tasks and whatnot, the finances. And then the other component is the external side and is actually the real world, the tenants, the properties, the landlords. It's like a zoo sometimes, and you just have to ensure each home is fed properly, because if you don't, things go crazy, things go wild. And a day-to-day would be like I come to the office and we have tons of problems and issues that we have to go through and solve, and you have to solve each and every problem in a timely fashion and orderly fashion way. If you don't, things get worse. Things start going crazy, and if you don't approach it in a time-effective manner, you will be behind the ball, and you could see damages from something that would cost maybe a couple $100 of repairing something to a couple thousands overnight.
Absolutely.
So we got to be quick, and we got to make decisions right on the spot. If we don't, things go sideways.
Understandable.
Yeah.
Very good. Jarek, do you have any questions for him here, or do you want me to ask my next question?
Continue. You are the guys to, closer to that.
Jason squared. That's how it is, right?
Very good. So, what would, when somebody's out shopping for a property manager such as yourself, what would distinguish you as a property manager over someone else?
I guess it's more like my sales pitch. Now, anybody can sell. I can sell the service and get them through the door, sign the contract, and I got their business. But I feel that's the easy part. The hard part is actually the day-to-day management. And this is something I always told my clients, and this is what I learned from the mistakes of my dad, that one thing he didn't realize and utilize was how to have a team, and have the right team to, delegate the situations and other problems properly. So what I tell my clients is that when you look at a business, when you're shopping around, and these are clients not just in my area but other areas as well, is that always see who are they working with. Do they have a team, or are they doing everything alone? If they're a lone soldier, then guess what? What they're doing is not only marketing your place, they're showing your place, they're doing the back end, they're doing the finances, they're taking the calls, they're dealing with the problems and issues. A property manager can only do so much. Human can only do so much. And if you don't utilize the team effectively, there's no way you'll be a successful property manager. So the first question I would ask is, are you working with a team? And if not, you should think otherwise.
Yep, absolutely. So,
how long have you been in the industry? You mentioned already, right? Like 2 years, something like that, or more than that?
I would say my dad was a realtor since forever, for as long as I can remember. And my background is in finance, which I got my degree in. And I've been renovating properties. I've been working with my dad, managing tenants, his properties. And at one point when I was, I believe, 21, 22, I got my real estate license. But I didn't do anything with it because I was in university. I was working a part-time job, helping my dad, and I never went anywhere with that. But I did train myself. I did reach out to mentors, and that's something I do on a constant, like monthly basis. Always reach out to mentors and always learn from them and kind of shadow them and see what they did. So professionally, I've only been in this industry for just over 2 years now.
This looks like interview style, but can you have some references?
Yeah.
Which is, we trust you, we believe you, that you are very knowledgeable in the field, right? So
it's fair. It depends who you ask. I'll tell you why. If you ask for references, tenants, they don't always like me, and because I'm like the middle guy. I'm representing the owner, and there's been times where the tenant wants something, but the owner won't do it, and I'm in between because I gotta do what the owner says. So I look like the bad guy.
Yeah.
So it depends who you ask. Owners love me. Tenants don't love me. I predict that I probably will be one of the worst rated property managers in BC in the next 5 to 10 years, and because they're going to be tenants who probably blame everything on me, which is understandable.
Good.
But clients, they're making money. I always look for cost-effective, tradesmen and whatnot to find cost-effective solutions for their problems. So they love me for that. But if in terms of references, I can literally provide you tons of different clients. You can give them a call, and boom, and then you can just talk to them about it. It's really hard for me to. I've never been asked this question, to be honest. If you have any references, but I'm more than happy to provide.
I definitely agree with you there, Jason. It's like I said, I've been in the industry doing insurance restoration and working with property managers, doing apartment buildings and condos. The property manager is always the most hated person by tenants. Especially if there's an insurance company in there as well, because now you've got so many parties that have to get approval from so many people that it just delays the process and does nothing but irritate the tenant. Something as simple as, like a toilet that leaked and now they need new floor and a new cabinet baseboards. It could be a month-long process, and the tenant's just sitting there shaking their head going, call somebody in here. It could be done tomorrow. And I agree with you. So, I mean, you're right on that tenants will never love you. You might find a few that will love you because you've solved the problem quickly and didn't have to, jump through hoops. But when it comes down to it, it's not always your money to be spent. So, yeah, I definitely get that.
There's another thing I learned from my experience. I learned this pretty quickly because my dad, I hope my dad doesn't watch this, but my dad's a cheap guy, right? And he doesn't spend money on repairs, and he always finds some guy off the street to fix things. And I don't believe, I don't get involved with this stuff. So anyways, I learned from that. And part of what I do when I sign my contracts with my clients, I do actually have a budget that I'm allowed to spend without permission. And the reason why I have that placed is because the way I look at this business is if a client approaches me and hires me to do something they can't do, there's a reason. They're coming to me for my professional services, and therefore they should not be micromanaging me. Otherwise, they should be managing it themselves, right? So I take that initiative, and I use my professionalism and I use my duty as a property manager to make sure I protect their property. And I will make calls. I will send a tradesman as needed if I feel that the owner's neglecting it, or if something's being neglected, I will send them. I will make that veto decision and just go do it, right?
Absolutely.
And if the client hates me, I have a client who got really angry at me, but the long-term picture, they were very happy. They had happy tenants. They got rent every month. The house was maintained, right?
Yeah.
So you got to always look at the bigger picture, and sometimes you got to make decisions that make you uncomfortable. But that's the life of a property manager.
True.
Quick question: are you working with Russians?
Not yet. Maybe one.
Maybe one. That's the big one, right?
Maybe one.
That's funny.
Man.
We got a couple of questions coming in here. First question from Juan is, do you have a contract with your clients, and what are the key points to consider on that contract?
The key points. Yes, I do. I sign a very nice long contract with my clients. It's not just to protect me. It's just, the lawyer likes it that way. But now the key things. The main things I go over, I tell them how our structure is and how we proceed forward. And I'd like to do this one thing. I won't be very specific, but I always tell my clients the worst case scenario. I don't know. I feel that it's really important for me to be very, very honest with them. And I tell them, I'm like, if you're coming to me and you think you're going to get a perfect job, then do not hire me. I tell them that if you feel that I have magic powers that I can do something you can't do, then do not hire me. I'm just simply providing a service that you do not have the time and the team to do so, right? Now, when I say that, the worst case scenario, I explain to that this business is not perfect, never will be. I can't control what the tenant does once they move in. I can't control their life. I can't control their job. I can't control their family, whatever. Things happen. And if they do not pay the rent, if they damage the property, I tell them, and I ensure that they know that what are the steps we would take. And I also tell them I won't abandon them. I would take the legal steps, but there is a chance that they will lose money. Mm-hmm. I make that very clear because I feel that's important for your clients to be educated that going through a property management company doesn't mean that you're going to have rent every month on time. That doesn't mean you're never going to have problems, right? We're all human. People make mistakes, and screening processes are not always perfect. I mean, there's times where someone has an amazing job making about $80,000 a year. 6 months down the road, he gets divorced and gets a drug habit and loses everything. I mean, things happen, and this is what I see. I see a totally different sphere of the world. You don't see, it's not always black and white.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, there's never one answer to solve all problems when it comes to property management.
Mm-hmm.
So, Juan has one more question here. He says, how do you deal with tenants that do not pay on the first of the month, and how do you prevent them from getting past due on the payments?
Russians.
Problem solved. Yeah.
I think it's important, right off the bat, never get emotional with this business. So tread lightly. Do not get emotionally involved with their tenants. And a lot of homeowners make this mistake. They get so emotionally involved with their. I'll tell you why I'm saying so. They get so emotionally involved that they're too fearful to say things like, "Oh, late, you didn't pay rent on time today. What happened?" Or they're too afraid to send eviction notices. So how do I deal with tenants? Well, I keep it business, and I do not try to get emotionally involved with my clients. So actually, I never have. You just have to kind of throw that out there, right? I already have a girlfriend and mom and dad, and that's already crazy enough for me. But you want to keep it always professional. If they do not pay on time, your job, and you must do this immediately, is send them a 10-day eviction notice. And what I mean by that is everyone has different eviction notices depending on where you are, but you need to send that eviction notice immediately. And you don't have to send it in person if you feel uncomfortable doing so. Send it through registered mail. What that shows is that the tenant knows that you're serious. Yeah, you're not screwing around, and you take this business seriously, that you want your rent on time. And if they continue doing so, if they continue paying late, you have to send them eviction notices again and again and again. And if you send it, I believe, 3 times, you can legally evict them. Just don't take it, honestly. It's not worth it. It's simply that if you want them to take you seriously, you have to take it seriously yourself. If they feel they can push you around, they will push you around till the last drop,
They'll take advantage of you.
Oh, yeah, big time.
So what is in that eviction notice? Is there any clauses about, you will be losing money because there will be breach of contract? There is any extra terms which should be included?
Not so much. It's pretty simple. I highly recommend to use whatever the government provides you. The reason why, so if you go on, I can only speak of BC right now, but in terms of our BC website, they have a bunch of letters that you can send to your tenants, and you just kind of fill out the form. The reason why it's so important to use what the BC government provides is because if it goes to court arbitration, they can understand it. They know what it means, and it's very simple. Like they know the language of it, and it will work in the court system. It's approved by the court. So if you do everything properly, you'll get your possession of your property much sooner than later. So, and do you want to add something? Not really. You don't need to. It's pretty cut and dry that, if you don't pay my money in the next 5 to 10 days, I have the right to evict you, kind of idea.
Yep.
And
Betty's asking.
So Betty here, she's got a question. Juan's got one more as well that I'd like to quickly touch on. It just says, which day of the month do you receive your service per door as a property manager? So obviously you're collecting rents on the first. When do you pay out to your investors?
Generally, and this is sometimes you struggle with long weekends, and sometimes it depends on the systems you're using. I tell my clients, you will receive your money within 10 business days, assuming rent was paid on time. If rent is not paid on time, then there can be a delay. But I would say 10 business days from the date the money is received to allow the bank processing, weekends, whatnot.
Checks to clear and all that. Yep.
Exactly, yeah. So I always recommend my clients to have a kind of a buffer in the bank account for mortgage payments and other expenses, whatnot. It's very important.
Absolutely. So Betty's question here is, do you have, going back to, the giving the notice if they're late on the first of the month, do you do that on the very first time that they're late, or is there any leniency? Can you expand on that a little bit?
It's a good one. Okay, if my tenant tells me ahead of time they're going to be late and I pre-approve them, I don't care. right? That's because they talked to me, they communicated with me. But if I put a new tenant in and they're late, and I give them 40 hours. I mean, I'm not evil. I'm not like completely evil, but I give them some time. But I will send a notice, and I'll tell you why. Like I touched on this before. You give them any leniency on terms of paying you,
Yep.
they will take full advantage of you, and they will continue doing so. And here's the thing: let's suppose tenant does pay late, and they keep pushing it. And now, at one point, after like a year or 2 years, they keep paying on the 15th constantly, always late, always late, always late. And then one day you send the eviction notice, say, you know what, I don't want it late anymore. The tenant could say that because you were accepting it late since the beginning of our tenancy, I have the right to pay late, and you can't evict me. And if you take the court, the tenant will win, not you.
Yeah, you've
So-
set a legal precedence there that you didn't do that the first time, so now the second, third time they can argue that, hey, you know what, why did you do it this time and not the first time? So as soon as you set that legal precedence, you've got yourself in some trouble.
Exactly. You need to keep it strict right from the get go. Never business and personal matters always should be separate, right? So never get personal. Just think business, think about money, because at the end of the day, the bank is not going to wait for you, right? They're not going to let you delay your payments. You're going to get those fees. So why should you? You got to think it. You got to think in the bigger picture, like the bigger picture of things. Their tenant's not always going to be a tenant. They're going to be gone one day. Just think business.
Good. Joe, go ahead, Jarek. Sorry.
What kind of reports do you provide on a regular basis, monthly, to the property owner? That's the question from Joe.
So we have a system where it actually sends you the monthly report of income and expenses, right? Every time they receive their rent, it's emailed to them. Unless they wanted mailed to them, we can do that. But that's our general way of doing it. At the same time, we have the system set up where our tenants and landlords can log in at any time and actually check their financials, their reporting, based on the period they want to look at. So they can go do a year, semi-annually, monthly, and they can check every single expense. The receipt will be attached. Everything is cut and dry, black and white, in terms of our financial reporting.
Question on that, does the reporting, if the client's logging in, does that actually show any ongoing issues, any cases that are going on? So if a person's called in and reported a leaky toilet or something else, is that also in the logged in area? Can they see that info?
Yes, they can. We have something called a task system, and basically any problems or issues that are reported to the office are uploaded online. And in fact, our decisions are based on an online system as well, and it's a very, very structured format. It's not just part of my service, it's also a way to keep everything organized, everything filed, and have it for each and every property. Now, there's times where I get direct calls from owners or tenants, right? And you don't have the time to report it because you got to deal with it really quickly. So there's times like that, but we do report the expense onto the account afterwards anyway. But those are the those are just emergencies and whatnot. But for the most part, I would say 90% is everything is uploaded and reported.
Very good. Very good.
So I have a question. There is quite a lot of people, considering not to use the property managers, right? In order to make sure that they are well treated, and would you mind elaborating what kind of costs, given or take, they should expect, and why they should use the professional property manager, right? It's very important for optimizing the logistics, but I want to hear about your point of view.
Good question. So why hire me, hey?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, hiring a property manager, my dad, throw my dad in this again. He's the type of guy, I'm not hiring any property manager. He wouldn't hire me. He's too cheap to pay me. But I could see if I could convince my dad, and I think I almost have. It's taken me 2 years to convince him, but and I always use him as like my the day I know I'm going to be I know I'm a professional when I can convince my dad to use my services, to actually want to pay me to and and I see how he does it, and I still see how he does it, and it's always a headache, and he's always whining about it, not crying about it, but whining about it, and it's all over the place. And I'm like, how much did you collect this month? He's like, I don't remember, I gotta check my book. And then he goes through like 20-30 pages. Anyways, and then there's a problem, and then sometimes he still throws me into the picture, and I call the tenant. I'm like, what's the problem? I'm like, your dad has been neglecting this, he hasn't been doing this, so I'm gonna move out, I'm leaving. Anyways, long story short, why hire a property manager? Well, a good property management business will provide this 24/7 service. Literally. Like, I get calls in the middle of the night if it is an emergency, and I got to deal with it. It's almost like a doctor. You got to send someone out. You got to get a technician out. You got to do something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you believe in the bigger picture, if you want to, you're an investor. I'm assuming you're buying a house because you want to. You want financial. You want to be financially free down the road. In order to do that, you need time as well. So if you're working 9 to 5, and then after that, you have to be working on your property and figuring out things and issues, that's going to take away time from yourself, from your family, and other potential investments. So a property manager is worth it if you value your time. If you value your time and you want to grow bigger, you need to hire the right property management business to run your operation. How do you find a good one or a bad one? That's a tough question. How do you know again, you got to ask the right questions. You got to really do your homework. Referrals are great. Talk to realtors. They can refer you to good places, good people. Walk into their office. If it's a one-man show, I'd be very careful. Property managers have a bad. They're not all great, because the old property managers like to do it the old school way, and I feel like because it wasn't so systemized, and they're not utilizing technology that we have available today to, help grow their business or help manage their business. Those people who are not doing that, even right now, they're someone you should worry about, and you forget, things fall through the cracks. You forget to do things. You don't collect rent properly. You want a full-on system, right? And again, how do you find a bad or good one? It's a hard one to answer, really. But if hiring a property manager is I don't like clients who want a micromanagement. I tell them, I'm not the right person for that. I need the right client is someone who thinks about the bigger picture, who believes in their quality of time with their family, and they want a life after work, But if you want to be, so that's pretty much it.
We can talk about that all the time.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I could. Yeah,
so what kind of given or take percentage? How are you getting paid?
It can vary depending on the area, depending on the price of the property. It can vary depending on if the home is, if it has already furniture, like if it's vacant, it's empty. If it's a condo, it's a house. So I would say, furnished as well. If it depends if it's furnished, it can range from 6% to almost up to 15%.
15. Okay.
Yeah, it really depends, because a furnished unit will cost more. There's more work required. Non-furnished unit, a smaller home, will be much easier to rent. If it's a problem house, which I do sometimes have, and I call them slum houses, I like to charge a higher percentage because there's a lot more work intended, But generally, if I was to speak in my area, Fraser Valley, they would range anywhere from 8 to 10%. So that's what you would see.
And now, does that matter if the place is rented or not?
Yeah. So what happens is, if it's not rented, the first month is always it does cost extra, and some people the range for the first month cost would be 20 to 50%. Some people even charge a full month's rent. it all depends on the package, depends on what they offer you or what they upsell you, right?
Mhm.
But it can, my general, I would see 20 to 50%. And then after the first month is done, thereafter it is the natural monthly rate.
Very good. Very good. So there's another question here, and it's from Juan. It's a lengthy question, and I think there's a few pieces that we're going to have to maybe get some clarification on. But it says that he has a template that he provides to his property manager in which it shows all the information. And I'm guessing by the comment here, it's that his property manager is female. It says she deposits already my money, but my question is whether you have a template for your clients. In this case, he's provided one based, I'm guessing, on information that he wants collected from the tenant, is what I'm assuming. When you're screening a tenant. So I guess the question is probably that, do you have a template that you use for screening the tenant, is the way I think this is going. And the second part is, do you deposit the rent, I guess, the money into the owner's bank account in full, or do you take your percentage off first?
Okay. Yes, I do have a template. I find that finds us a lot more effective, even though I know the questions, even though I know what I'm looking for. I make all potential. Okay, so when I do the showings, I always refer them to my website, and tell them to answer an application form. If they do not fill the application form, I will not give the place to them. I mean, I wouldn't even look into it. I'm not going to even consider them. They have to fill it out. And then after we go through the screening process, or are you asking what kind of questions I ask, or?
No, it doesn't go through to ask the questions. It just, the next part of the question goes into asking about the rent. So when you collect, say if it's $2,000 for the rent on the place, do you collect the $2,000 and then give the full $2,000 to the investor, and then send them an invoice for what your percentage was, or do you take that off the top and send them the balance?
Right. So this is what I explain when I first sit down with my clients. We do deduct our commissions out of the rent, and then once that's deducted, we pay them as well, or any other expenses, such as like if you send a repair as a tradesman or whatnot, and then we send it to them, and then in the financial report they can see the expenses, our commissions. It's very black and white in terms of financial reporting.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, I'd hate to run a business the other direction, that I give you all your money and then hope you're going to pay me.
Oh, I know.
So that makes sense for sure. All right.
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Jason, what your experience or feedback or suggestions about the Airbnb management? Have you ever experienced what? Because people, they want to, offer that kind of services.
The way I see it,
Yep.
I am Batman, and Airbnb is like Robin Hood, like Robin.
Okay.
They're like my sidekick. Like we work together, but not together at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel that Airbnb is always gonna be there, but at the same time, it's gonna get pushed back. Like Airbnb is great. I mean, you make money out of it. Like who wouldn't want to do it, right? Airbnb is an awesome place. Is great for like tourist areas. They're competitive. Do I find a problem with them? Yeah, I do sometimes. It's because you can't control your neighbors. You can't control the noise. You can't. By the time you figure out the noise issue, they're gone. There's new people in there, and then they're great. Like there's constant complaints. So the thing is, when I have a new client, there's no way for me to find out if there's going to be an Airbnb in that building, when I work with buildings. In detached homes, it's never an issue, but it's a big problem in any kind of condos I get. And fortunately, I'm situated in an area that I don't have to experience many Airbnbs.
Okay.
Fortunately. Now, in terms of what I think about it, it's a very, very profitable business. I have a friend
Mhm.
He's now he's a luxury home, and he's actually he rents his Airbnb, brand new custom built home for $500 a day, and you would not believe it. He's booked for the entire year and he only has 1 day to use it for himself. Pretty incredible.
I am not
So
surprised. I am not surprised.
it's crazy. So yes, there's money, but I feel that with the policies and the government is going to start pushing back very soon. Councils are going to push back, 100%. I mean,
What I
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, if I'm going to spend over $1 million on a condo, the last thing I want is an Airbnb beside me. So I'm, as an investor perspective, as a homeowner perspective, I'm going to push Airbnb now. As an investor perspective, Airbnb is very profitable, but there's high risk, and I think the tolerance is now it's not there. People are not happy with Airbnb, and I think it's going to get pushed out. I'm not saying completely legal, but I feel that a lot of buildings will not allow Airbnbs anymore.
Okay, so my question will be follow-up question. Let's assume that I am an investor and I would like to use a guy like you to manage my property. What kind of have you ever worked in the Airbnb? What's your outcome from investor property management management company relationship in order to run an Airbnb? So what kind of fees and everything? Is it viable? Is it something which people are doing, or what's your outcome?
I wouldn't hire someone like me for Airbnb.
Okay, got it.
I mean, realistically, it's not. I wouldn't be the ideal person to hire. Reason why is because if someone was to ask me to do Airbnb, I would consider it, but I would charge a much higher rate, or I would charge more of a flat fee. And I would, because the thing is, in Airbnb, you need cleaners, it's more of a daily routine, not a monthly routine, and I wouldn't have the time or resources to do that. You're better off hiring, maybe it's micromanaging yourself, right? There's no true Airbnb management companies out there yet.
Yeah.
I mean, there might be some small ones growing, but it's a hard one to take care of. Very, very difficult. And you really just need a cleaner end of the day. After a couple of days, I see that look. He's like, maybe I should start an Airbnb business.
Jason.
Yeah, I looked into it. I've contacted the right people. I know some guys who just sublet and then use it as an Airbnb and make over 6 figures a year. So it's possible. It is definitely possible. It just really depends on you.
Very good. Very good. So Anne-Marie has a question here. The question is what about property management for senior homes? Does that exist?
Good question. Senior homes actually require tons of different licensing. Now, if you're talking like a 50 or 60 plus home, yeah, we can do that. But if it's a senior home in terms of like a senior aid home, kind of home care aid, right? That's a completely different jurisdiction. In fact, you actually, to even get licensing with that, it's a whole different ballgame, and that wouldn't be me. In fact, a doctor needs to be licensed. You need to have 24/7 nurses on file. It's all in-house staff. It is a completely different game altogether. Again, if you're looking for senior home care, I'm the wrong person to talk about. But if it's a vicinity of like 65 plus, or basically domestic 65 plus, yeah, then we can definitely do that. We can definitely manage that accordingly and have the right people on board and staff that's required. Every rule is like there's different laws in place, so we do have to follow that very carefully, of course, but it's definitely doable.
Very good. Very good. What's the other question we got here? I didn't get a chance to read this one. Okay,
so what kind of things do you look for finding the perfect tenant? How you screen them? That's a very important question, right?
Yeah. So
horror stories.
It's fun sometimes. because you can gossip back here. Like in the back of, you don't see, you see the front of my office, but you don't see what happens behind the scenes. And we get to gossip about it because we uncover secrets. We uncover things that maybe they didn't realize we can see. And social media helps a lot. You'd be surprised. And we can see who they're friends with, and we can see if they're lying. We do a lot of land title checks. You know how a lot of people tell me landlord reference was Bob, and when we do a land title check, it's some completely different Asian name, right? So we know they're lying. They're just giving their friend's name, kind of idea. So we do a lot of full-on screening. Now, the biggest thing is, I am a believer where you have to find the right tenant for the right place. I mean, if I'm gonna, like, I'm not trying to be rude or I'm trying to discriminate anyone or anything, right? But like, if you have an executive tenant, are you gonna put them in a low quality home? It's not gonna happen, right? I mean, you're gonna find different quality of tenants that work with the quality of home, if that makes sense. And that's, so we have different grades, we have different, I mean, finding the right tenant, it's not easy, but if they can pass the questions that are required, I can overlook other things. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. For sure.
But if they're lying in any way, we maybe give them extra chance, if let them know, like, hey, is there something you want to clear up? Is there something that you forgot to add? That does happen. And if they're still lying, then we pretty much throw their application away at that point.
So what kind of tricks you use? Tell me.
Okay.
You pretend somebody else, or?
No, I don't go that far. No. I mean, that'd be kind of funny. It's. I feel like when you're screening tenants, it's like you're telling a story about the person. Okay. You're really investigating their life, and sometimes you investigate why they made certain life decisions. Why did they move then? Why did they leave their job? Or why did they only live there for 6 months, or they've been there for 6 years? And you find out their life story. Are they getting divorced? What is their reason to move? Here's one thing. You got to question this. And a lot of investors, homeowners, fall into this trap. When you put your place on rent, you put your ad on, you're going to get tons of calls. It's going to be somebody every time. I need this place now. I got money. I got deposit, right? Those people
grow up, guy.
Well, just got to be like, you know what? Send your application. Let me think about it. Now, there's been times where they've been legit, but majority of them are running away from something, And I believe that sometimes you need to meet the person to really feel them out. You have to have some intuition finding the right tenant as well, right? It's not just paper. It's not just facts. You got to have some kind of connection with them, right? You can feel the energy. I can't explain that part, and it's not something I can write down or anything, but I feel that there is some kind of energy that you can feel off someone if they're going to be good or not. And then, of course, you got to go through with facts and make sure everything is aligned. One thing, we are not allowed to discriminate. So I do not discriminate. However, what I do discriminate is their finances. I'm legally allowed to do that as well. I will ask for their income. I will ask to show me proof. I will ask them to show me their bank statements. And it's worked every time. And if they're afraid to show it, sometimes it's understandable, right? But if I can guarantee that their jobs or something, it may be a little bit different story. But for the most part, I do ask them for the finances. If you're making so-and-so, show it. Prove me. Show me the money.
Do you ever get them to provide a criminal background check?
Unfortunately, no, I don't. Now, if they have it with them and it's current, yes. I'll tell you why. In the area I am in, it can take up to 2 to 8 weeks to get a criminal record check, and it costs about $80. So it's not really time effective, unfortunately. I wish I could, even though you cannot discriminate based on the criminal record either.
No.
You can't. So you got to be careful with that too. And you can't force someone to do that. However, you can check their public criminal record. It doesn't have all the details, but you can definitely check that. And so it's available to anyone. It's public information. So that's something that you can utilize if needed. But no, I don't ask for a criminal check. It just doesn't make sense, and it's too expensive. And by the 8 weeks later, like I did my criminal check to where I'm working now, and I had to do that to get my license, and it took 8 weeks, and it's crazy, right? So it is what it is. It's politics for you.
Absolutely. All right. So what other questions we got here? I see a few popping up. Got one. I think we've kind of covered some of this information, but it's based on what is the criteria for selecting tenants, the information you ask them, which could be a long-winded question. Do you have tenants fill out information, and what are the due diligence you perform in screening tenants? So I think we kind of covered a fair amount of that. I don't know if there's anything in there that you want to add to.
The few red flags, I'm kind of reading that too. It comes down to math. I'm a big numbers guy, and you gotta look at how much you make, and let's say everything is legit, they're not lying, and everything's accurate. The last step we take is we want to see how much of their income is being used to pay for their rent. So I'm talking if they're using more than 40 to 50% of their income and is going towards their rent and utilities, then you got to see how much they're left over with. Are they on do they actually have enough money to support living there?
So like debt to income ratio kind of thing?
Yes, debt to equity income ratio, but we only have so much information we can work with, right? So we can see their expenses, and we can kind of give an approximate utility cost. Like I have some people who would only have maybe $300 left out of their income for themselves, and I was thinking like, no, this is not going to work, and I had to deny them, unfortunately, because I just know that maybe 4 or 5 months down the road they won't be able to afford it. Something happens, right? So you want to make sure tenants are not going to be rich. They're renting for a reason for the most part, right? But you got to consider all the factors. Can they actually afford it in the long run, right? So, yes.
Very good. So, what about some of the ugliest things you've seen? As far as being a property manager, you've obviously come across some incredible, findings. You go into a property after a tenant's left, or tell me something that's going to blow my mind here.
Okay, I'll give you one scenario. I'll give you two. The first scenario was I went to this senior lady, and she had a pension. Everything was legit. Great references. I don't know what happened, and she kind of and I got to admit that this was my tenant, right? And it was not the lower quality home, but she had a pension from the police from ages ago. Anyways, she was living with a roommate. Long story short, she became an alcoholic, and just is like 70+ lady, right? And she became an alcoholic to a point where she was drinking, what's it called? Alcohol, like cleaning alcohol, whatever you call that. I don't know. She was drinking out of that at one point. Anyways, the story before that, she wasn't answering calls. She wasn't paying the rent. And I felt that something was wrong, because every time I went to the house, I'm the type of guy, I'll show up at the house any time of the day. I don't care if it's in the middle of the night. I'll just show up. And I was a bit worried. I'm like, there's something wrong. And because she'd call me constantly in my office and leave crazy voicemail messages, like she was some cranky senior lady or something, or she was super high or drunk or whatever it may be. Anyways, it was unfortunate, but I found that something was wrong, and she wouldn't come downstairs. And I showed up like at least 3 times, and she wouldn't come downstairs for whatever reason. And at one point, she stopped responding, and I had to take a step forward. And in any emergencies that I feel that's an emergency, I have the right to enter without notice, and I did. And what I found was her dog was sitting there eating his own feces and that urination everywhere on the main floor. And I felt really bad, so I ran to my car. I quickly gave the dog food, right? And then I quickly go back upstairs, and then I started walking upstairs, and I see this bowl, and I see feces in the bowl and urination in the bowl, and then right beside the bowl was the old lady just sitting there, and she was breathing, but she was sitting there. Oh, we're laying there, and at that point, I just had to call the emergency and hospital and kind of send her out. And I don't know what happened after that with her, but that was an unfortunate situation. I don't know what happened, but she did ruin the place. There was urination and feces all over the house, and it really scarred me in some ways. It was like, oh, wow, people live in different tough conditions. And she was a lady who was abandoned by her family as well. So, it was all those things that came apart. And anyways, that was one story. Another story was a lot of my clients hire me to kind of clean up their mess. See, I'll be honest. Out of all my properties I've managed, I've only had two really bad situations that I've cleaned up and fixed up. But at the same time, I have clients who give me problem properties, and I don't know why I like taking a challenge. Sometimes it's enjoyable. And there's this one house I took over, and the investor bought about 6 or 8 houses, so he never seen the house. And there was an old guy living there as well, and he wouldn't let me enter the house. He wouldn't pay the rent. It was just huge problem. And I looked through the windows and I could see clutter everywhere, junk everywhere. I tried to evict him, but he wouldn't leave the premises at all, and he was an old man who couldn't walk properly either. So you have to be very careful. These are sensitive situations. You can't be rude. You can't be disrespectful. I know a lot of money's on the line. They're not paying rent, but you have to take it very sensitively. Anyways, long story short, he finally left, or I think the police arrested him for something else, and he left the place. And I gotta tell you, I'm back in my car, in my trunk. I have a mask, like there's a breathing mask at all times, and gloves, because you never know. You never know, especially with all these drugs and like fentanyl out there. You touch the wrong thing, you could get hurt. Anyways, I walk in the house with a mask and gloves and a flashlight, and oh my god, it's still horrifying. And I took pictures. I saw is garbage everywhere. I'm talking piles. You couldn't even walk properly. There's piles, and then if you move the garbage a little bit away, you could see dead rats, feces sitting there. It smelled so bad. Like I had to breathe from my mouth, because if I breathe from my nose, even with the mask on, I would puke. The bathroom, I don't know what happened, but there was like poo smudged all over the walls, the sink, the toilet, the ceiling. It was horrifying, and I did take pictures, and it was so bad. Like I was almost scared to walk in there. And in those situations, what you have to do is you gotta take that, like you gotta just pretend it's not there and take the right steps going forward. And what's the first thing you got to do? And I got cleaned out, and the things we saw and what we discovered, I won't talk about. But unfortunately, I'm gonna tell you, people live like this. There's hoarders out there. People have different life stories, and things can turn around, and it's unfortunate, but you got to deal with it, right? So yes, the cost of renovating this house was about 20 grand minimum, and it's still not in good condition. So you got to be careful with the tenant you choose.
For sure.
Wow. I've seen bad houses.
Yeah. Oh.
There's been times when because I'm the guy who collects your money, right? Nobody likes that guy, and there's times where I like to show up at the property and kind of give them eviction, like face to face. Sometimes it depends on the situation. I really want to see what's going on, the real picture. And once I gave an eviction notice, and she had 3 pit bulls, and she almost let them go, and I had to run to my car. That was not a good situation. I gave the eviction notice. I see the lady, and she knows who I am. She knows who I am exactly. She let the big pit bulls loose. I ran for my life.
You should consider making the TV show.
I ran for my life. It was
Evictions
so bad.
Guide.
When I first became a property manager, my first property I took on, oh man, it was. I questioned why I became a property manager, because I took over the management, and he's a doctor, so he doesn't know what the heck's going on with his property. Anyways, I took it over. This is my first property I've ever managed professionally. I walked in, the brothers, sisters, wife, all screaming, yelling, swearing, throwing things at each other. The house was disgusting too, and they're just in a huge fight. And I'm standing there, I'm like, oh God, what did I do? Why did I choose this profession? And I took a step back, just thought it through. I'm like, okay, guys, and at that point, I became a mediator, and I became a problem solver, and I kind of almost became like, it's like almost we had a therapy session, and we try to figure out the problems, and sometimes you got to do that. It's just you're almost like a counselor for some people. So every problem, every situation is different in its own way, and you just got to deal with it systematically.
Have you ever come across a dead body at this point? I've renovated multiple properties that have had people pass away in it, and it's an unfortunate and terrible event.
No, I haven't. Not yet. Not.
Cross the fingers, it'll happen.
Oh boy, yeah. I don't know. That's something that I'm yet to see. I mean, that old lady was almost there, I guess.
Almost, yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, it's hopefully whatever happened with her, it's on a positive side. But yeah, I'll tell you, you'll that little air mask that you're using, you may want to swap that out, because if you walk into one where someone's been there for 2-3 weeks, you'll know about it immediately.
Really? Good to know. Good to know.
Switch your air mask out to an active carbon filter so you don't smell it.
Thank you. Thanks for the advice. I hope that we have a really good screening process. Now, of course, I can't control a natural death, but we have a very good screening process to avoid situations like this.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good.
Yeah. I was given an offer on the property, which the gentleman passed away 2 months prior, and he had 5 dogs, and the 2 dogs survived, and 3 dogs, those 2 dogs, they were eating the flesh. Just to give you an idea, flesh, stories, right? So.
Yeah, I've heard similar stories. So
I once found a snake under a pile of garbage, and I am fearful of snakes. Like I hate snakes. So you can imagine me running.
And Betty, thank you for everlasting image, Jason. This is part of the job of the investors, why we should be working with the property managers on a regular basis, right? To avoid such kind of situations. Simple as that, guys. Okay.
Absolutely. I would way rather that Jason here, that he goes in there and sees it than me.
So we have a question also from Juan too, right?
Yeah. Well, so
do you manage properties that have a suited basement and there are no legal suitable basements?
Yes, I do. However, I make it very clear to the potential tenant that I'm renting in a illegal suite, and as long as I do that, I'm just performing my services, my duty. It really I wouldn't put them on a contract. I would do it month to month tenancy if it's not legal. I'll be honest, I try avoiding it though as much as I can. It's just because what I tend to find is like there's the legal suites are awesome. They're great because they have all the everything included. But in a legal suite doesn't have everything included, so it's unlikely you're going to attract a good tenant. Because I mean, who doesn't want a laundry? Who doesn't want a proper stove? You know, like I mean, people want their space, and someone who doesn't need that, I mean, sometimes you can get a student, sometimes you can get a single person in there, right? But what I found now again, this is depending on the area you live in, area you service. You're gonna find different types of people, and I just feel that my experience has always been bad. With I mean, when I say bad, is that I haven't been able to find a good quality tenant for an illegal suite. So I just try it. Yeah.
Something to consider, right?
Yeah, exactly. I always recommend this. If it is, I've been like, just rent the whole. If it's a detached house, rent it out as a whole house, and it's so much better in the long run because you're gonna find the tenants upstairs and the tenants downstairs are gonna bicker, fight, or if there's noise complaints. Sometimes they're great, life's good, but a lot of the times you'll find problems, right? And if the upper tenant knows that it's a legal suite downstairs and they really don't like that person, they're going to report it to the city, right? And they're going to start getting fined again and again. And then you have a utility problem. If you split the bill, sometimes they complain about they're using more, they're using less, blah, 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 blah. And then they're going to bicker about the prices. And again, we handle those situations and I've done it pretty well. But those are just situations that you may experience especially when you're renting a house to 2 different tenants or 3 different tenants. In Vancouver, unfortunately, you're seeing a house being rented to 3 different tenants. So it's crazy.
Yeah.
Something 4. It's nuts in Vancouver.
I've come across investors here in Saskatchewan that have the illegal basement suite very well might have a full kitchen, full bathroom, have their own not utilities, but even have their own washer dryer. But they may not have a legal, egress window for the tenant to get out if there's a case of a fire. And there was a case of a fire. It was probably about 8 years ago, but the investor was actually sued, and lost a lot. I mean, because now it's gross negligence. I mean, it's no longer protecting your corporation. They can come after everything you own, when you get into a scenario like that, because you're putting somebody in a position where, if there's a fire, there's no way for them to get out. So. I would caution investors to buy a property that's not legal. It's your risk that you're putting that tenant in there.
100%, and you gotta go by what the insurance says. The insurance companies are now finding ways to find a way not to cover you if something does happen. Anything can happen, and they're gonna find anything they can in their place to not cover you. Speaking of insurance, like a lot of investors don't realize this, that in your insurance policy that you sign, and this is typically for detached, attached is a little bit different, but detached homes require every 90 days student inspection. So something to look into. A lot of people just sign it, don't care about it ever again. But if you can't prove that 90-day inspection, sometimes it's semi-annually. If you can't prove that, and you have to make a insurance claim, might not be covered at all. So something to think about, right? Of course, property managers do provide that service, and that's part of their packages and whatnot. But that is something we do too. But it is something, if you just have a house and you're micromanaging or you're managing yourself, you should at least do inspection every 90 days.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons. Sorry.
Go ahead, Jarek. Go ahead.
And one of the reasons takes 3-4 months to generate the grow up, right, on the detached, right?
Depends who you speak to.
Might take 2 weeks if these guys are organized. Yeah.
Well, I'm not so worried about grow ups anymore. I mean, it's almost legalized here. What I mean that I don't.
Okay.
I mean, it's commercialized now. They have actually. Like they actually are growing on farms, and they actually have their own systems, commercial spaces now. They don't really do it in homes anymore. Maybe they might have a couple pots or plants, right? And that you can't really detect. But like a full-on grow up operation is not. It's unlikely it happens in houses as much anymore. It still does. Don't get me wrong, but it's unlikely. It's becoming commercialized, and I would say next 5 years, it's very minimal. But now there's other things that do occur now. There's other drugs, other problems, other issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd like to just mention. I mean, you were talking about the 90-day inspections there. In your experience, have you seen different rules in the insurance based on a vacant property?
Yeah, vacant would be, I think it's once a week, or
Okay.
and now it depends if it's a detached or condo. If it's condo,
True.
it's a lot easier.
Yeah, my experience, I've seen that a lot of property managers, if there's a vacant unit, even if it's due to renovations or whatever, they have sign-in sheets that are there, for the property manager to sign in every 3 to 4 days, just in case. I mean, if a pipe bursts, the insurance isn't going to be happy with you if that water's run for 4, 5, 6 days with nobody to attend to it, right? So, especially talking like a single-family house, you make sure you're aware of your insurance and what the requirements are if it's vacant, or if you're going to go on a holiday. That somebody's coming in and checking on the property. Same thing. I mean, even if it's not a rental property, if it's your own personal property, if you leave on a 2-week holiday and a pipe bursts, and I did see this in Saskatchewan. It was middle of winter. It was a week of -30, -40 in a town just outside of Regina, and it was an Army Reserve guy. He got called out, and his pipe froze and burst, and the water was pouring out the front door. The entire basement filled up and poured out. It was a wood basement, so it was even worse. The house was a complete write-off.
Yeah, I've seen that a couple of times too for older homes.
Yeah, I mean, now it's he's able to keep the upper half of the house, but now he's responsible because his insurance isn't going to cover the basement and anything else, so he's going to pay for it. So
you know what, that does happen. I have clients calling me to help them figure out a solution, but after the flood or damage happens, you can't do anything about it. Insurance does not care. It really depends on my clients. If sometimes we do, it really depends if my clients want us to do that. Sometimes they say no, don't worry about it, right?
Yep.
Our turnaround time is pretty good, except in the winter. We're not able to rent out properties as quick. But there's been times where we did weekly inspections on a multi-million-dollar property until it was rented. So it depends on the owners, but I would agree that's a great idea, especially if it's empty. And you never know what may happen. You never know.
Squatters, who knows? You never know what's going on. Vandalizing,
Oh, don't even get me started. Squatters.
Horror story.
Yeah. Oh, once I had to hold I had a pocket knife because I saw a cat in a house. And I saw someone moving in the house, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!" And I was doing a showing that day, and it was snowing. But I had 4 people waiting outside for the showing. So I told my tenants, I'm like, "Can you just move away? Can you wait for me? I'm just gonna walk through the house." And I had to hold my pocket knife just in case, And it was a lady, and she saw me, and as soon as she saw me, she ran out. And she ran with whatever she had in her hand. But I'm telling you, this happened maybe in 48 hours. And the amount of mess she left in an empty home cost about $800. $800. It was just unreal. There was a cat in the house, and the toilet was plugged. I don't know what it is, but why they always plug toilets, I don't know. But it was completely plugged, and it was disgusting. So I've seen that. I've seen homeless people move in less than 24 hours, and it caused about another $800 cleanup job. I've seen this, and it's unfortunate. Just what can you do? And even when you call the cops, they sometimes recognize the homeless guys by their name. It's crazy. It's like, oh, I just kicked him out from that place. I guess he moved into your place. I don't know. It's
all the more reason to be checking in on your properties, right?
Yeah, it does happen.
Very good. Any other questions from anybody else here?
What about rooming houses? That's one again.
Oh, yeah. That's a good question.
The room, if you're renting a room, it's a completely different jurisdiction. I think
rooming
it's called
houses.
Yeah, so if you're renting a room, is that
Yeah.
what you meant? Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's I think it's under the Hotel Innkeepers Act or the
Yes.
something around those lines. It's a completely different ballgame. It's actually a lot easier to evict someone from a
Yeah.
room than it is to evict someone from a house. So rooming situations, I would say, only work in high dense areas and places like Vancouver, I would say, or by universities.
Yeah, I was gonna say universities is a big one.
Yeah.
Universities, you make good money out of that. Like I have a similar situation, like I'm renting rooms, but it's more like students living together kind of idea,
Hmm.
and the owner is definitely profiting big money off that, definitely. So again, it really depends on the area, but it's a whole different ball game. Property managers don't tend to do that, but we do. We can, depending on the situation, right? As long as it's fair, we'll do it. Like there's been times where I denied business because I feel that the owner wasn't being fair. I just felt that it was not right. And you never want to do something that makes you too uncomfortable that you feel that it's wrong, right? So, and you don't want to be in a tough situation because there's a lot of weird people out there, right? And if you're renting out a room and you don't know what's happening in the other room, it's got to be careful. Gotta be careful. There's just a lot
Yeah,
of weirdos out there, so tread lightly. Tread lightly.
yeah. You don't want that swingers club starting next door to you. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So Joe's got a question here about how honest can you be when someone calls to ask about a former tenant and their payments, etc.
For tenants. Okay, so the way I see it, if a tenant's moving from a house from the first landlord, uh, and they're a problem tenant, but they paid, but they're a problem tenant overall, the owner is going to say whatever they can to get them out. Right? They're going to say good things. That's why I always am careful when I call for their current landlord. And take whatever I try to really kind of get as much information I can get out of them. And then I always ask for previous landlord because they have no motive to say good or bad, right? For the most part. And that's worked out very, very well for me. If they don't provide me previous landlord, I will not look into their application unless they can prove that this is their first time they were living with family or that they had their own house or whatever it may be. But I will not proceed forward with their application unless they give me a previous landlord.
Very good, very good.
Oh
So
yeah. So sorry to answer how honest you can be. I mean, as a professional, I got to be careful. I can't be. I can't say everything. I only talk about overall situations. I can't be very specific. As non-professionals, I mean, you do what you need to do.
Whatever it takes, right?
Yeah.
very good, Jason. So I guess for a lot of the people that are online here that might be looking for a property manager, can you just give a little overview of what areas you serve and why you serve those areas only?
My zones are Fraser Valley, which consists of all anywhere from Surrey, British Columbia, to Chilliwack. I do not like to go any further as I do not have the resources or team to provide quality service, and I feel that I'm already full of. There's abundant of business available in this area that there's no reason for me to reach out. And even if you did hire me for a job in Vancouver, I wouldn't be able to be there. Like if something happened, I can't do anything. So it's a hard drive. I wouldn't be able to provide that same quality as if a local resident or property manager would be able to provide. So if you're looking for property managers, look in the local area, in the vicinity of that local area, right? And because you never know, things happen, and you need to be there. You need to be present, right? You never know.
Very good, very good. Well,
anyway, if you will be having any questions related to the property management guys in your area, just shoot it, right? And we could know quite a lot of people, Jason, right?
oh, absolutely.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Definitely, right? So that's the primary goal, right? So the message is to provide you with as much information about property management, how that is handled, and if you are not in the Vancouver area, don't worry. If you ask the question, we will get you the proper property manager, and we will
100%.
definitely use Jason as a referrer or anything, whatever is needed to be asked. That's the primary goal, okay?
Of course.
So,
very good.
that's the message, right? We are Canada-wide organization, and that's what we are looking and aiming for, right? So,
Of course, I have mentors in Vancouver area that I always go to if I have my own personal questions, right, about the business, and there are awesome property managers out there. They're great. I can definitely recommend good team players.
yeah, Toronto, Montreal, Calgary, anywhere else, guys. Okay, but we have to follow up with the guidance and rules, and Jason was explaining how that works from the perspective Canada-wide, right? Just to give you an idea, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I always recommend check your local municipal city for any documentation, eviction notices,
Of
because
course.
each provincial government does have different guidelines and rules. So I really recommend you do your homework as well. It's very important because you don't want to miss anything. You want to go by their way, their route, and it's not only to protect your property but to protect you as well, right? So do your homework. It's always important. Don't forget.
Due diligence. Yeah, absolutely. Always.
Exactly.
Well, if that's it, it seems like everybody's got their questions answered. Greatly appreciated, Jason. Thanks so much for the wonderful stories, the information that you've provided. Best of luck on your first unfortunate viewing that you will come across one day.
If you want to hire Russians, let me know.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm excited. All right. I'm cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
Very good.
Thank
Thank you
so
very much, everyone.
And thank you, everyone, as well. I really appreciate this.
Absolutely. Take care, everyone.